if we if we had enough military aid, we would have taken back our territory, because it's not the lack of courage on the side of our soldiers. It's not a lack of commitment on our side. It's lack of weapons. It's lack of fighter jets to protect our skies that is actually forcing us into this very uncomfortable situation where we have to choose which territories to keep.
European leaders are to be invited to attend the Monday meeting with Presidents Trump and Zelensky at the White House. Trump told European leaders after his talks with President Putin that he supported a plan to end the war in Ukraine by ceding unconquered territory to Russia. Zelensky, who was not invited to Alaska for the summit, said he had a long and substantive conversation with Donald Trump whilst he was in the air on Air Force One early on Saturday. Zelensky said they would discuss all the details regarding ending the killing and the war on Monday. So in a moment, we're going to look at how this might play out across the rest of Europe. But first, let's get the reaction from Ukraine. Joining me now is Inna Sovsun, who's the Ukrainian MP for the opposition party Holos, and she joins us now from Kiev. Hi there, Inna.
Hi.
Okay, what's your immediate feelings after the statements that were made after that summit in Alaska?
Well, first of all, when I was looking at the press conference last night, was it here in Ukraine, there was very strong uneasiness on my part. I could see two men, none of whom is in any way representing me as a Ukrainian, none of whom is as a Ukrainian representing the country's interests, are deciding on the future of our country. And that felt, well, slightly imperialist, to put it mildly, but also extremely unsafe. Because say whatever you want, but those two people, President Putin and President Trump, they first of all care about the interests of their people, and the interests of the Ukrainian people were not really represented in that summit in one way or another. What was the result of that summit is yet to be decided. We are hearing some rumors about what was decided. There was some reporting by The Economist saying that there was a decision for a preliminary air ceasefire. Well, that surely didn't work out, because just over the night we had the one ballistic missile hitting Ukraine and 85 drones which have attacked the territory of Ukraine. We had 2 air raid alerts during the daytime here in Kyiv, so that definitely didn't materialize. Then there are conversations about potential continuation of those talks with a potential territorial swap, which has been suggested before, which is, of course, not an easy decision to be made by President Zelensky.
Because what's the feeling in Ukraine about ceding territory to Russia? Is it now the feeling that that is an inevitability, or are you determined as a country to fight to protect your original borders?
Well, asking for the country if it is willing to give up any part of its land is, I think, anyone in any country would respond that we don't want to do that. Because what is important in this discussion of territorial swap, it's not like we're being suggested to swap Russian territory for Ukrainian territory. We are being suggested to swap parts of Ukrainian territory for other parts of Ukrainian territory. And that's like asking a parent, which of your kids do you like more, right? Which of your cities do you want to keep and which ones do you want to give up to a dictator? There is lots of confusion about this whole idea in the Ukrainian society. We are not. I don't believe that majority of Ukrainians support this idea. Not to mention that it's going to be completely unconstitutional.
But is the brutal truth that Ukraine may not have any choice? I mean, President Trump said the ball is in Volodymyr Zelensky's court, but he's powerless, isn't he? He can't do anything except keep fighting.
Anything at all, because just over the last 36 hours, Ukrainian army managed to fight back against the Russian offensive in Donetsk region, and actually not just slow down, but actually reverse some of the offensive that the Russians took over the last week. So we still have some powder to fight with, and then we still have the very strong army to fight with. What we are lacking are strong allies who would be willing to support our fight, and that is very much unfortunate, because if after that Donald Trump will come out and say, okay, if you don't want to give up the rest of the Donetsk region. And for those listening to us, I need to mention that currently the territory that Putin doesn't control is a third of Donetsk region. So it's not like 5% or 10%. It's a third of Donetsk region, which does include the city of Pokrovsk with around 80,000 people who used to live there. The city of Kramatorsk, the same amount of people living there. The city of Slovensk with around 1,000 people living there. So we are talking about people's lives here.
Of course. And listen, Inna, I'm not for one moment suggesting that the incredible bravery of the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian army in defending your territory, as you rightfully have been doing over the last 3 years, is anything that isn't noble and necessary. But it does seem as if there is a growing acceptance that if the slaughter on the front line is going to stop, then Ukraine might have to accept losing some territory to the Russian aggressors. With that in mind, when Volodymyr Zelensky flies to America next week, what should he be looking to extract from the Russian president, in your view?
Well, we do not believe in extracting anything from Putin at all. But what we hope is real security guarantees from our allies and friends, and not like the Budapest Memorandum type of security guarantees, which basically led to nothing for us, but real security guarantees where we'll have the strongest army to make sure that we are never attacked again like we were in February 2022. Those assurances need to be made by our friends and allies, because we wouldn't really trust any assurances coming up from Putin's mouth.
What role does Europe have to play here? I mean, we've heard lots of fine words from European leaders. Do you think they have stepped up enough to help Ukraine?
Well, they have stepped up, but was it enough? No, unfortunately, it wasn't enough. If we had enough military aid, we would have taken back our territory, because it's not the lack of courage on the side of our soldiers. It's not a lack of commitment on our side. It's lack of weapons. It's lack of fighter jets to protect our skies that is actually forcing us into this very uncomfortable situation where we have to choose which territories to keep.
But you're an opposition MP. What would you want to see Zelensky come away from Washington with as a minimum?
Look, I am an opposition member of parliament, but not an opposition to my own people. And on issues related to foreign policy, to military situation, we all share the same understanding with the President Zelensky. And we all share an understanding that, well, we need very strong assurances, and we need to make sure that we don't agree to anything unless we get strong military support, strong understanding of which types of weapons, when we will be getting, how we will be protecting our skies, how air defense will be working here, and so on and so forth. Without that, any sort of deal, it just makes no sense to us at all. It will only mean a pause, and then Putin will attack again in a couple of months or a couple of years.
Given the scenes we saw in the White House last time Zelensky visited President Trump, and given the warm handshakes on the red carpet that President Putin enjoyed, whose side do you think America is on? Or whose side do you think this American administration is on?
Well, presumably the American administration is always on the American side. So that's the reading of what is the American side and what is in the interest of the American people is, of course, probably different with this administration compared to the previous one. It was, of course, very unpleasant for us to view the red carpet being rolled in front of Putin without him basically doing anything. He didn't change a single thing in his behavior. He didn't stop the killings, the rapes, the kidnapping of the children, and he gets the red carpet. That's, of course, unacceptable. And I'm not really sure what exactly was the US getting out of this. They could have promised Putin a summit and the red carpet if he agreed to something. But for some reason, this current administration chose to go another way around and first give Putin what he wanted. That was legitimacy and recognition on the international arena, with a very vague promises that maybe he will agree to stop killing Ukrainians.
Well, Inna, thank you for your time. I hope to speak to you again. That's Inna Sovsun, Ukrainian MP from Kiev. Let's now look at the role of Europe in all of this by speaking to Dr. Neil Melvin, who's the Director of International Security at RUSI. Hi there, Neil. Can you hear us?
Hello.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
You are there. Excellent. I saw you on television a moment ago and wondered if it must have been recorded.
I've been listening in.
You're in demand. I just wonder whether Europe has done enough. I mean, you look at where President Trump is positioning himself with regard to Vladimir Putin, and of course they have the money and they have the might. But has Europe been slow to respond, and what opportunities exist now to help Ukraine if that's what European leaders decide that's what they want to do?
I mean, there's no doubt that Europe has been very slow to sort of wake up to the significance of the Ukraine war. I mean, we're sort of over 3 years into it now, and we're still only really starting to see the money flowing now and an increase in armaments. There's clearly an uptick, but for it to take them this long, I think is pretty shocking that the Europeans haven't been able to step up. And as a result of this very slow response, of course, we see that Europe looks very weak. I mean, the summit has really exposed that Europe is not even at the table, while the future of European security is being discussed over the heads of European leaders by Putin and Trump. And Europe doesn't really have an awful lot to bring to the table. And there's a lot of discussion about this coalition of the willing, boots on the ground. But this is pretty soft security assurances. We haven't seen from the Europeans a willingness to really commit to a NATO-like security guarantee to Ukraine, because I think when they look around the continent, they see they've got hollowed out military forces that probably would struggle actually to sustain that kind of commitment.
It seems that we've got a massive leadership vacuum that President Putin is exploiting expertly. If Trump is leaning towards Putin, Europe doesn't seem to have the will or the manpower to actually deliver on what it wants to do, and Ukraine itself is wholly reliant on the gifts of others in order to maintain its territorial integrity. Who walks into this gap, and does what happens next is the big question.
Well, I mean, there's clearly a big struggle now on a diplomatic fight to try and shape what happens next after the summit. I mean, the summit could have clearly ended in quite a flat way. Trump had gone in. He tried to talk down a bit expectations, saying there's sort of 25% chance of success. But nonetheless, I think he was still hoping that they would have something more concrete to come away with than the way that it ended up. So now we've suddenly seen this pivot really on the plane back from Alaska by Trump to embracing the idea of we have to give up on the ceasefire and focus full scale now on a peace deal. And this is where we're starting to see these pieces coming together about the territorial question that we just discussed. I mean, the converse of that is Ukraine doesn't want to give up existing territory that it holds, not just because, as we heard from the previous speaker, I mean, these are Ukrainian towns and villages that are already populated, but this is the key defensive belt by which Ukraine has been trying to hold back Russia since 2014, actually, not since the recent invasion. So this is a key strategic region. If they give up the whole of Donetsk region and parts of Luhansk, the country could be open in a way because they haven't got defensive lines that are significant beyond those areas. So then the converse of that is that they have to have security guarantees, but no one has been really willing to do that. Now, suddenly Trump is talking about security guarantees, but the devil's going to be in the detail here. I mean, the NATO security guarantee is a legal binding guarantee that Congress supports. What we may be talking about here is more like a political promise. If there is a confrontation in the future, the United States will get engaged. Well, then Ukraine has to really wager its future security by giving up these key territories on a Donald Trump promise, which I think most people in Ukraine will feel is heavily informed by Trump's own agenda of trying to win a peace prize, in which we're not really sure how deep is his actual commitment to Ukraine's security.
Yeah, and it does seem as if we've moved on significantly from the Ukrainians saying they want to defend all Ukrainian territory at all costs to a tacit acceptance that they are going to lose some territory one way or another, or the bloodshed will continue, or the Russian advance will continue. What you seem to be saying is that even if they accept that, they may not have the guarantees that their remaining territory will be properly protected either by NATO or by any kind of coalition of the willing boots on the ground agreement, which could stop future Russian aggression.
This is where I think the Monday discussion has to focus. You can see that the polls in Ukraine have been moving to a position where I think people are war weary, and they're perhaps ready to accept that the territory that Russia currently occupies, they don't want to sort of legally admit that it's gone to Russia, but de facto as part of a peace agreement, I think they might be willing to accept that. But to give up land that is currently held by Ukraine, now that is, I think, seen as a red line in the country. And the only way to do that would be to have some kind of security guarantee. So the coalition of the willing, what the Europeans have been focused on, it started out with quite high ambitions. There was an idea we might put in sort of 30 to 40,000 heavily armed troops to really sort of police a peace agreement. It soon became apparent that there wasn't a commitment across Europe that would sustain that. Some countries definitely don't want to be part of that. Others are wavering. But even when we started to look into it, it wasn't clear that the bigger countries, UK and France, sort of fundamentally can sustain that kind of presence. It would require a huge commitment to Ukraine. And of course, we're already spread very thin with our commitments on the UK side to Estonia, to other parts of NATO and the eastern flank.
Indeed.
We simply don't have those kind of troops.
Indeed. Well, Dr. Neil Melvin, thank you for your time. It's good to get your expertise. Neil Melvin is the Director of International Security at RUSI.